Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Liang Xi. I'm Professor of Sustainable Transition in Construction and Infrastructure at the Bartlett School of Sustainable Construction at the UCL. It's my great pleasure to introduce our prestigious guest at today's discussion on green development opportunity for younger entrepreneurs today. And I would like to extend a special welcome to our guest of honor, Mr. Wang Shi. He is the founder and honorary chairman of China Vanke Group and the board chairman of Vanke Foundation. Mr. Wang is one of the most successful and respectful entrepreneurs in China, as well as a champion in driving climate change mitigation. We are very pleased for a number of prestigious guests in our event as well, including Mr. Lei Hongwu, China Country Director and of Children Investment Fund Foundation, and Zhang Ruihua, Chair of Chinese Students and Scholars Associations UK. And now I would like to introduce the Director of Bartlett School of Sustainable Construction, Professor Damaris Kaufman, as today's host to give a welcome address.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for joining to hear the address by Wang Shi, who has very generously offered to speak to you today about an incredibly important topic, which is the role that entrepreneurs can play in accelerating the low carbon transition and the race to decarbonization. And his focus is not just on entrepreneurs generally, but specifically on young entrepreneurs, which means you, the people in this room, and the people on the call in a wider audience. Because young people today, on the one hand, are coming of age at a very difficult moment after the COVID pandemic. There's a huge amount of uncertainty. Many of you don't know whether the careers that you envisioned for yourselves when you were in high school will still exist or what form they will take. But you also know that there's a climate emergency and geopolitics are more uncertain, and that there are many things going on in the world that are challenging. And I think it's really uplifting and inspirational to hear from someone who firmly believes that young entrepreneurs can play a role, not just in combating climate change from the ground up, but also in building state capacity to fight climate change from the top down as well. So we're really, really thrilled to have Wang Shi here. He is the president of World Wildlife Fund China, WWF China, and has experience of bringing together a staggering number of Chinese enterprises to support the efforts of the WWF in China. So he understands corporate engagement. He understands what it means to deal with small businesses, but also very large businesses like Vanke, which is a business being self-founded in China. So I think he's uniquely placed to explain to you what the challenges and opportunities are for you as young people in rising to the challenges of the climate emergency. And at BSSC, we're already incredibly grateful to Wang Shi and his colleagues at the Vanke Foundation, because if you remember COP26 in Glasgow, Vanke very generously provided their corporate pavilion to us, and we ran 6 events at BSSC, side events in the Blue Zone, because they were able to extend this hospitality to us. So we already feel in their debt for helping us as a department and as an institution publicize our events and our efforts to rise to the climate emergency and to accelerate this transition. And now he's going to speak to you as students, as young entrepreneurs, as people embarking on your professional careers, to understand what role you can play in what is undoubtedly the greatest challenge facing human societies at the present time. So join me in welcoming Wang Shi to present to you. Thank you so much.
Very glad to be sitting here with the students, teachers. I'm very happy. And for my experience, for the already to introduce a lot of. So I normally mention about the corporate conference. So the last year, I attended the corporate 26 in Glasgow. And for this speech, I think talk about something about the corporate conference. I think beginning from the 2009 and till the 2021. And for the future, next year, after next year, this year that COP 2027, and the year next year, 28. Already, till now, I already have attended a conference for 40 years. So I talk about my experience. So for me, I know if I speak in Chinese, so I can very, very relaxed, very can control, very mature. Talking about these topics. But speak in English. So that is some a little bit difficult. But I think I had tried. So first, give me a chance practice speak in English, and then next half time maybe we dialogue, maybe by some translator, maybe easier. So beginning that practice speak in English. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor to come and speak to you at the UCL Bartlett School. Thank you for your kind invitation, Professor Hoffman and Professor Liang. The last time I came to the UK was half a year ago, and the main purpose of that trip was to attend COP26 in Glasgow. It was also at the China Corporate Pavilion of COP26, where I met with Professor Hoffman and Professor Liang for the first time. Last year, I insisted on going to Glasgow for COP26, despite the ongoing global pandemic. It is the first time that the China and Enterprise Day hosted by the Vanke Foundation was upgraded to the China Corporate Pavilion. There is also the first time that a Chinese company and NGO hosted a pavilion, and it has become an important venue of dialogue among international climate leaders. Okay. There were a total of 25,000 delegates at the COP26 last year. The COVID did not stop delegates all over the world from coming. The feeling at the scene was very urgent. We have to act, and we are no longer talking about how to do it, but we must act now. During COP26, a total of 39 side events were organized in the China Corporate Pavilion, and a report was released by our partners. There include 5 side events hosted by UCL, covering the economic impact of deep decarbonization, international cooperation with China's CCUS, climate resilience. Is that right? Resilience, right? Infrastructure, emission reduction, certification, and trading systems, and released the Global New Economics CO2 emissions report 2021. During the Glasgow Climate Conference, Cambridge University invited me to attend the ceremony of conferring an honorary professor on the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Guterres. In the evening, I had dinner with the Secretary General and the professors from Cambridge University, and with no surprise, they talked about climate change. There were 2 opposing, how can I say that? Opposing views. One was affording confidence and hope as long as positive actions are taken, and Mr. Guterres for such a view. But some influential professors had a pessimistic view and believed that, according to the current research data, it would be too late to take any action. When it was my turn to speak, I expressed a cautiously optimistic view. Mr. Guterres listened to my comments carefully. At the end of dinner, I walked up to me and said to me in non-standard Chinese, 谢谢你. What's that means that thank you. Right? What is my reason for being cautiously optimistic? This starts from the 2009 Copenhagen COP15. That was my first time at the climate conference. What impressed me the most was that when I stepped off the train, I saw large portraits of the leaders of various countries, and mainly the developed countries, not including China, but the developed countries. And the various developed countries, they looked something 50 years old. Then they walked. There was a sentence written under their faces. I'm sorry, I could have stopped catastrophic climate change. We didn't. The tone of the conference was very pessimistic, as the views of the developed and the developing countries were difficult to meet each other. But I'm cautiously optimistic. It comes mainly from the commitment made by the Chinese government, a 40 to 45% reduction in carbon emission intensity by 2020. That is China's first public commitment on climate failed to the world setting a new tone for development strategy. It also means that national policy changes are bound to happen. Obviously, at that time, companies faced huge uncertainty and many difficulties in green development. But I formally led Vanke to sustainable construction. After that, firstly, Chinese public opinion no longer entertained the idea of developing forest and reducing emission later. Then the national policy strongly encouraged green development and environmental protection. Then the policies of various industries were gradually made clearly. It was a great opportunity only for companies that are well prepared. Vanke seized the opportunity by making the breakthrough and taking the road of green development at the right time. After Copenhagen, I attended the UN Climate Conference every year for 13 years. The exception, of course, is 2020, and the conference was delayed due to the pandemic. Every year at the climate conference, we will lead a delegation of Chinese entrepreneurs together. I remember when we went to Copenhagen in 2009, we were a delegation of only 2 representatives and a secretary general, representing about 100 companies. In that 10 years later, in 2018, I participated in COP24 in Poland. Can you guess how many Chinese companies were represented? Guess how many? One. Why one? The 2009 that year already representative 100 companies. 10 years later, how many companies together? Guess? 2,000. It may be more. How many? How many? The number is 1 million. 1 million. And 给点掌声啊。This number may sound absurd at first glance, but do you know that China has a total of 40 million companies, and a million only account for 2.5% of them, not more than 3%. At Glasgow in 2021, we face a situation so similar to Copenhagen. China has made a new climate commitment, and I remain cautiously optimistic about the future, and we must act now. Years of experience in entrepreneurship have taught me that the more uncertain and difficult situations are faced, the more entrepreneurs should take practical action. The essence of entrepreneurship is to constantly try and interact in practice, to find a new possibility in the road that no one has traveled. After China announced its peak carbon neutral goal, I have started a new business in the new carbon neutral economy. I'm working on carbon neutral community development. The first project, the Vanke Center, is already under construction, and I have received very positive feedback. It was the headquarters of Vanke built 13 years ago. When the building was designed at first, we fully adopted the concept of green buildings from Europe and the United States. The building was certified to LEED Platinum. That means LED, that the green buildings standard in America. The platinum, that the highest standard. The best class of a green building standard. Until now, there are still less than 100 buildings holding the LED platinum certificate in China. However, by the standard of the peak carbon neutral target and the SDGs set by the United Nations, they have to ensure that global warming cannot exceed 2 degrees by the end of this century, and strive to limit it to 1.5 degrees. The sustainability of the building is not enough. In our innovation project phase 1, we will further reduce building energy consumption by 60%. And 60%. The proportion of green power will increase from 18% directly to 85%. Only 15% of the electricity is supplied through the city power grid. As a result, carbon emissions will drop by 93%. 93% reducing carbon emission by more than 800 tons per year. However, it's not enough just to make the numbers right. The idea of a carbon neutral community has 2 parts. The first part is the building's infrastructure, the so-called hardware, as well as technical know-how. But the second part is even more important. It is the people in the community, to change people's mindset and promote a low carbon lifestyle. The purpose of my visit to the UK this time is to learn the practical experience and cases of the UK in building carbon neutral communities. I have been to the Eden project in Cornwall. That's 8 years ago. I already visited that Eden project for 3 times. Where people not only, I mentioned that the Eden project in Cornwall, where people not only build a botanical garden in an abandoned mine site, but also held concerts there, allowing people to enjoy art in a more natural environment. Tomorrow, I will revisit the BRE group, the concept and the project of BRE put emphasis on the interactions and the experience of community resistance. This philosophy of a human-centered approach to sustainable development inspired me. The design of a Vanke Center gave back around the space to nature. The building that elevators over the ground achieve a 100% green rate. Operators are rooftop garden and breed honey bees, making maximum use of the space for biodiversity. The next step in the renovation in the Vanke Center was also inspired by the Eden project, where we use art and nature to activate the underground International Conference Center and Museum, highlighting biodiversity so that people in the community can better enjoy the beauty of art in the community experience, the harmony of the community and the nature, and use the power of art to transmit the concept of sustainable development. During COP26, in between meetings, I went to visit the Scottish Canal Association on behalf of World Canal City Organization in China. We exchanged understanding about the culture of canal and the development of canal cities. I also rode on the Scottish Canal together with the president of European Rowing Federation after COP26. I continued my canal rowing trips in Dubai Creek, and Singapore City Canal with local community leaders. This is a continuation of my campaign in China to row through 20 cities along the Grand Canal. With 46 Chinese entrepreneurs, we rowed through the canal last year to champion healthy lifestyle and environmental awareness. Our call for zero carbon, zero waste, and clean water was answered positively in other countries. My global canal rowing campaign showed that sustainability is a universal language that connects cities and countries together. Carbon neutrality is not the end, but a means to make life better for the people. Last week, I rowed in Washington, D.C., Boston, and New York with my crew. We will continue to row along canals in the UK, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Germany, and Japan, extending our global campaign to 18 cities. As another example of the UK's influence on me and Vanke, I have to mention WWF, the World Wildlife Fund. WWF is the world's largest environmental NGO and the first one invited to work in China. In 2008, I was invited to attend the annual conference at the WWF headquarters in Switzerland to talk about the work promoting residential industrialization and green buildings in Vanke. Since then, Vanke and the WWF have established strategic cooperation to launch an environmental audit system for timber use. As a result, all the timber used on Vanke's construction sites must be globally certified as the legally sourced wood. In 2017, I founded the WWF China Fund to support WWF's programming in China. I found out a great variety of conservation projects, including the Everest snow leopard, the Siberian, how can you pronounce it? Siberian tigers, and the Chinese sturgeon. Understand what is a sturgeon? Sturgeon, right? 那个一种中华鲟，一种鱼啊，在长江 sturgeon, Chinese sturgeon. There are two main funding sources for this project. One was the U.S. office, and the other means that sturgeon and other that was the UK office, WWF. I remember the first time I visited the UK office of WWF, the founder is Sir Julian Huxley, a famous British biologist. I was the brother of the great novelist Huxley. The natural and the simple design and concept of the UK office remind me of the connection between art and environmental protection. At the core of environmental protection is the pursuit of the beautiful life. This year, Vanke Foundation will continue to foster China corporate pavilion at the COP27. I will continue to bring Chinese entrepreneurs to share their cases with international peers. I'm also planning a special rolling tour on the Suez Canal as a pathway connecting Europe, Asia, and Africa. I sincerely invite UCL faculty and students to participate in our pavilion. I expect you to help Chinese entrepreneurs understand British philosophy and practices in taking carbon neutrality in communities with a human-centered approach. Thank you very much for your attention.
We'll take questions and have a discussion that's partially online and partially in the room. And if you can speak Chinese, please address the speaker in Chinese. Otherwise, speak in English and it will be translated to the speaker. And then he will reply in Chinese and Hannah will translate that for English speakers. So that's the basic format. Why don't we try in the room first and then we'll move online. Does anyone have a question for the speaker? And we can start with our guests. On the phone. Do you have a question to speak for, or would have a question here, or shall we move to the students? Go ahead.
你那个什么角色啊？在这里扮演的角色。That of course they play an important role, and but according to traditional culture in China, normally the government play of course an important role, right? At the boss. And secondly, now since open the door, the companies will play a very important role also. Of course, the companies that managers organize, promote entrepreneurs. And all of that thing, the third part also very important. Several different places play also very important role as the healthy community and the society have three different parts. But in China, unfortunately, in China, the NGO is very big. So that first, the very strong that government, central government, government and community. So secondly, that entrepreneurs is very important. And also mentioned, so in China, entrepreneurs play two roles. One is entrepreneurs who manage control the economy. Also, they promote, they fund that NGO. So as you listen for me, I play a role that half that half that the farmer was NGO. So I think that role is very important, but only entrepreneurs that may.
Thank you so much, Mr. 然后可以简单就说完英文Thank you so much, Mr. Wang. I'm sure many people have known you for decades because you are so successful.
No problem.
But in this class, I actually want to highlight. I'm personally more impressed by your passion, your dedication, your determination, your leadership on addressing the challenges on environmental climate in recent years, not only in China but also globally. As you mentioned, many examples. I also really appreciate, as a professional from my side, we are living a COVID world with increasing geopolitical tension. International communication and collaboration are these new trends. I really appreciate your, in such a difficult, challenging time, you are having this trip to really bridge the, communication with the international community. So I'm coming from a philanthropy foundation. My question would be, what's your, suggestions for, foundations, for NGOs on, further promoting international collaboration? 王总，我就简单说一下，我觉得你，Okay, great.
Maybe if I speak English, you can understand. Maybe something like that. Translate from Chinese English to that mature English. And 好，就这样简单，咱们效率高啊，我就同理就给我了翻译。我非常简单来讲，就是刚才我也提到了这个两个主要的NGO组织 WF 在中国扮演的角色，实际上国际上，过去的20年呢，在中国建立的各种NGO组织呢是应该说是，我现在这样担任的各种组织呢，现在有接近50个， 各种NGO组织接近50个参加的，但是我发起的有13个。但是现在显然在过去，在中国的逐步的NGO组织发展壮大，但是扮演的角色呢是有限的。第二，在未来当中呢，应该是扮演的角色呢也是越来越重要。但我想说的是，在现在面对全球变暖、气候变化，就是碳减排、碳达峰、碳综合的这个经济转型当中呢 ，NGO 的就是经济动员力必须转型成的这样就是商业模式。我到这次来呢，现在更多的强调，各个行业再参加气候变化大会，更多是商业的模型、商业承担能力去推动。本身我在今天介绍一个大梅沙的非常棒的一项再重新改造，就是一个商业性，它是我自己投资。这个是就是应该说将来更多的是企业的就是更结合 ESG 企业社会责任，更多的在，所以就是我现在身份呢，已经开始更多的从17年的退休之后，几乎100%的是这样的公益慈善的这样做，转到2020年，就是在联合会议上，中国宣布碳达峰、碳综合2030-2060年，知道这个经济转型必须是商业模型。简单来说，不说2个指标嘛，一个就是控制在2度之内为实体，再一个控制在要接近1.5度。那为什么很多科学家呢很悲观的就认为2度已经够，到了2度完全就是气候就没法控制，只有必须要1.5度。所以现在看2度的控制都更好。那我们再看看这意味着什么？1.5度，中国就要投资，说人民币把你们换算成北京英镑，要投资呢135万亿。如果我们把这目标的调整控制不是2度，是还要极端些1.5度，要投资至少400万亿，就400万亿到500万亿之间。那你看看，这必须是投资，必须是商业行为。应该就是说，再回答一下，到底就是说，你说这个 NGO 应该扮演的角色，扮演的更多的是鼓动、推动、往前引领。但真正的，如果企业不行，如果国家的政策不改变，这个是不可能。所以我说我的谨慎的乐观就基于这个看，中国真的是，就是虽然目标我看着已经非常野心的，虽然国际上希望说还是不能再超前点，中国已经基本上不会难。
I'll just quickly summarize. So this one raised 2 points. The first one is there are the NGOs, there are about 50, and among those he founded about 13, and it is growing, but the influence is still limited. And the second point is that in the future, NGO is very, very important, but in terms of climate change issues, and in terms of achieving carbon neutrality and carbon decarbonization, the commercial impact of NGO will be limited. And main part of this, the aim of this trip of Mr. Wang around the world is to discuss and promote a more commercial model and to find the best business model. So he made Meisha, the Vanke headquarters in Shenzhen, the next Vanke headquarters in Shenzhen as an example. And that's an example of a commercial model that is reflected in this experiment. So some are basically in terms of the contribution in the future to really achieve the 30 goal is we rely very heavily on ESG mission and social responsibility of the corporates. And his personal transition in the past 3 years from mainly working to promote philanthropic and public endeavor will transform into a more commercial role. And we know there's 2 goals that's mentioned in the sustainability development goals. The first one is the 2D, and of course we will reach 1.5 degrees. Lots of people in general are very pessimistic about the 2 degrees. So what does it mean? According to China, according to our report, in order to achieve 2 degrees, we have to invest 135 trillion RMB. If you want to achieve 1.5, the estimation is 400 trillion RMB. So you can imagine how important it is to really find a commercial way to make it happen. Lastly, this one also thinks, again, the role of NGO is still very important. The aim is to really motivate and to encourage and to raise awareness in the public domain.
Go ahead, and then so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's start there. Yeah.
跟时间要求的这个工作呢，就是从去年开始在关注人家的4个演讲，然后在其中一个你提到这个安省，然后 SCC 关于沿海环境森林保护的时候，您提到当然提到大别山这个例子嘛，然后您强调了一个自下而上的方式。从我一个自身的经验来看，也是在化工企业工作的时候，它最大就从基层的角度，因为最大的瓶颈是对于化工企业来说，征税和罚款其实是比这些公司去升级这些污水质量或者是你其实要高的，所以他们更面临这些就是处理罚款。所以你觉得对于中小企业来说，他们没有其他就是可以其他盈利的子公司子分支的情况下，他们是怎么去平衡这个利益最大化，先去活下来这个责任，然后另外一个是环保责任，他们怎么去做这个平衡？另外，您认为就是像比较大的企业，相关的或者其他客户公司在其中扮演一个什么样的角色？
其实这样这个问题实际上是非常实质的一个问题啊，就是还是先发展再治理，还是一边发展一边治理？实际上这是中国过去发展呢是到了09年一个问题，01年之前非常明确在先发展再治理，因为你西方国家已经是排放了200年了，我们才排放30年，这是0几年之间的观点啊。当然像刚才说很多困惑，很多先自己做，不仅是小企业这样，大企业，但是呢，0几年之后一直到现在到了2021年，因为中国整个基本的这个国策基本的态度的转变。这里我不妨我先举一个例子，就是中国现在不是世界的制造工厂吗？不是供应链吗？国内怎么要求？这是一方面，另一方面你会发现，你说你生产的产品到欧盟到工业发达国家是有要求的，它有要求的。我这里不妨举一个很有意思的例子，叫中国的纺织工业。我们知道，说到纺织工业呢，没有什么大企业，没有什么大企业。有人还有说纺织这个国际的跨国的纺织企业没有，在中国也是一样，没有大企业。但是在如何环境保护、治理方面，无论是污水排放，还是空气的污染的治理，还是噪音，纺织行业做得非常好。没有大企业，就刚才你说很多纺织行业呢，这都是中小企业。为什么呢？就是因为世界上的著名的品牌，尤其是时尚品牌制造，就是 OEM 到中国去，他们有这个就是质量控制标准，有环境标准， 有污水排放标准，有用工的不能用童工，不能虐待劳工的标准。就是因为这样的一个国际品牌的倒逼，整个在中国的各种行业当中，纺织行业这面做的是有标准的。那我说的2015年在巴黎气候对应大会上，就是中国企业日，这就是一个非常鲜明的典型。我记得非常清楚，当时中国企业协会的孙会长去介绍，这2015年，但到了2020年，就是疫情的第一年10月份，竞选国际纺织协会新的主席孙会长当选为国际纺织协会的。我举这个例子只能这样来回答你，我不是关于其他中小行业怎么生存、怎么环保的这样的一个我的建议，我只能说我们做的就是来实际情况上来案例介绍，就是因为中国已经成为国际非常重要的，你不能说你怎么样，它是国际啊。如果你说我这个不出口，我就在国内加工，你国内标，你要是出口就是现在我们看到了这样对中国的承诺，多种原因，其中很有意义。你看我刚刚更多介绍了为什么到英国来，为什么到美国去，为什么要到欧洲其他国家，因为这块人家做得好，所以我们到那儿更多的就是这种交流，这样的学习，这样去借鉴，这样怎么去做。我只举这样的例子啊，现在各个中央企业我们知道现在中国面临的问题应该不是气候变暖啊，还是这个COVID 啊，现在出现这个问题，尤其现在上海这样来讲，这个问题非常非常大。其他的先看看怎么对，反而因为这个呢，因为经济不能正常运转起来啊，可能经济受到影响，和环保这方面也受影响。
Then I will just quickly summarize. So
Question as well.
I am
I just briefly mentioned the bottom-up approach that you mentioned in one of the speeches last year, and I referred to one of my own experience that one of my friends working in the chemical industries that the environmental tax compliance is even much lower than the cost of operating the water drainage system. So I was asking, as a small medium-sized state, how do they balance between the goal of profit maximization and environmental responsibility?
So Mr. Wang said it is a very complicated question, and it's a question between whether you choose to develop first or you choose to reduce first. Before 2000, China as a country always opted to go for develop first, and it's solely based on the fact that there's still need to develop, and also at the same time the West has been capitalized on the history for a long time. But since then, the national policy has changed. There's a slight shift. Mr. Wang used the textile industry as an example. We all know China is a part of a global supply chain, and it's made in China is very, very popular. So in the textile industry in China, we know there's no really big brands or big manufacturers, and it's especially the same whether it's in China or internationally. But because of the global brands, they have their own environmental control requirements for their supply chain, and it's actually forced all these businesses, whether they're big or small or medium sized, to comply with their standards and to be competitive in multiple fronts. And we see that impact within their supply chain. So in 2015, in the corporate day in Paris COP, the president of Chinese Textile Association introduced various developments in China. And a few years later, in 2020, when he ran for the International Textile Association, he got successfully elected, which means there's lots of organization and compliance, otherwise it wouldn't be collected. So this is our own real cases, and to show that we are now very integrated and all part of the global standards. Again, to stress that part of the reason why we take on this trip globally is he understands that especially the EU and UK has done a really good job in the sustainability front. And that's why he would like to come to here to learn the best standards and see how that we can collaborate. But of course, right now in China, lots of SMEs face this existential question. Maybe sustainability is not their priority, and he fully appreciates that.
Thank you very much. I think what I'm going to do is actually take a couple questions at a time. So I know that the second question is over there, and the third question is there, and then Tan had a question. But why don't we start with that question? If you ask in Chinese and then English, followed by her question. What? Okay, so take 3 questions then at a time. So say your question in Chinese and then English, and then 1, 2, 3, and then we'll go online for 3 questions. I think that's probably all the time that we'll have. So if you go ahead.
刚才我讲的那个纺织行业呢，这是个例子。实际上，纺织行业本身是污染大户，它属于水污染、空气污染。但正因为污染大户，是国际标准的这样的倒逼，你只有达到标准的，你才能出口。所以在中国来讲，无论你企业什么责任来讲，化工企业呀、冶炼企业呀，它的显然的是首当其冲。你无论你讲不讲社会责任，这里我再举另外一个例子，这样回答你这个问题。我们知道，北京周边的钢铁厂几乎都关掉了，因为要治理污染排污嘛。实际上关钢铁厂呢，大家这个谈论的理由呢，是因为空气污染。实际上，中国冶炼上的关钢铁厂的另外一个原因，就是产能过剩。当然这个和产能过剩呢，宽厂和减碳呢，它是不矛盾的，不是说但是就带来另外一个问题，这里是个故事啊，我觉得这个案例呢是非常好的案例。有国营的厂、民营的厂，相关点的，这没有什么疑问，相关民营，这个没什么秘密，相关民营。但是也不可能把民营去关掉，但是民营的要想不关掉，对吧？就是回答你问题哪个重要？民营就是很明显优先选择级来讲，那就是先关民营。那民营不想被关掉怎么办？你只有说我环保做得非常好，我碳减排减的很少了，你没道理关我，对不对？所以那就举个这个案例，这个厂呢名字叫德龙钢铁厂。那他为了让自己厂不被关掉，只有在环保上下功夫。我参观他的厂子，参观时候我一看，我说你让我看的当然是碳排放。我说你没炼钢啊？他说再见。我说你烟囱都没冒烟啊？不是你外行了吗？他说冒烟那就是有热气，热气我都回收了，热气变成电了。过去来讲就是冒黑烟了，说哎冒白烟就是碳排放讲，说白烟是怎么冒？白烟热气，热气回收。 我就举这样的例子，就是已经搞的，就按照不要说按照国内的人，按照国际标准，按照日本的冶炼业的标准，碳减排。回答的问题啊，你们来讲用学术器来讲，第一什么，第二什么，第三什么，完了应该哪个优先？为什么优先？第一个先提。那好了，我一看的都这么好呀，我说你得向国营公司大的冶炼厂去介绍经验。你看你做的这么好，因为我不是搞冶炼，这样我想当然我就是对不对？我也一定没你好。好，我就参观了一家厂，这是广东一家厂，韶关的，好像因为说厂不大，他怎么就收购了。到了一参观，回来就告诉我了，主席，你让我参观去，感谢你让我参观。我到这参观才发现，连国营的搞的碳减排比我们还好。哎，这就现在中国呀，咱们不能用这个偏见眼光啊，国营的什么时候都比营的差，效果不是。我就回答你这个问题，就是现在要碳减排，这一个国策啊，可能各种原因，那可能是别的，但我就告诉你，我的选择，我的优先级是什么？我如果说是我和为未来对子孙后代对环境不好的话，我宁可破产，我也不会我首先生存啊，我管他那个，反正我先生存再说，我不会，但是我不能要求别人，不能首先一个从道德再去要求别人，首先第一个解决生存。但是我这里想说什么呢？我的体会是什么？我的体会更多的是，我们不要从道德标准去判断，而是呢，你是不是长期主义？什么意思呢？就是你想现在你说我为了生存我这样做，将来它轮不轮你将来生存？如果你将来生存，你现在做的是不代表未来的话，你想改非常难。反而你知道这代表未来，现在做难一些，但是你将来就这样。我做万科做到现在一直这样，我才发现为什么我从万科退休了，我哪想在创业做什么？就因为听到了这个碳中和、碳达峰，我才发现我怎么一不小心为了这种碳综合经济，我一不小心就不让了。一不小心，刚才绝对不是说我只为了这一天的，我怎么知道这一天中国会宣布2030碳达峰，2060碳综合呢？我不知道，但突然发现，就我现在来讲做了20年，我现在最清楚，哎，我掌握的手段，我国际上的资源，我国内的资源，我对政策的掌握，我对各种技术的应用的把握，知道哪也可以用，哪也不可以用，哪也是未来才用，哪也现在就可以用，哪也是为了宣传用的，哪也是为了实际用的，我才发现。所以我现在来为什么觉得我不但我要做，我要去讲，要告诉你，就是说作为企业的社会责任呢，你最起码的来讲就是你一定得你要想好，哎，这就是我的一个对你这个问题的回答。
Just raise up the factors of energy. So, and is there any difference in different industry?
Again, summarize, Mr. Wang said, he just used the textile industry as an example. But of course, we all know it's an industry where pollution is very widespread. And that actually is why the global standards force the industry to decarbonize and to use the environment less. But of course, there's other industry, face a similar situation. So he would like to share another story. So there's we know that the steel plants near the Asia has mostly been closed, and apart from pollution reasons, there's also a reason for the excess manufacturing capability. And this is also, of course, this is also part of the environmental concern as well, because it produces carbon emission. So among these steel plants, there are state-owned steel plants, but also private ones. And without a doubt, we all understand that when they are asked to be closed, the private ones is the first one is going to suffer. And the next one says, what if they don't want to be closed? And what should they do? They should actually just do, provide a clear pathway to do better in decarbonization. So the government, they can argue with the government that they're actually not polluting as much. The successful example of this is a steel plant called Shi and Mr. Wang visited the plant and he jokes with the owner saying, I know why it hasn't been closed because you're actually not producing, so you're not polluting. And the owner asked, no, we're actually producing. And then this one said, but I don't see smoke from the chimney. And the owner said, actually, the smoke is actually the heat. And we have harvested the heat and recycled it for other productions. And that's why, for private business surviving in a situation like this, they should try to really accelerate. And Mr. Wang also mentioned that they don't always steel plants, they follow the Japanese standards. So coming back to the question, we all understand this from the academic point of view. We have 1, 2, 3 ESG, each different elements. But for a business to survive, most of the time survival comes first. And he also then mentioned that he actually then told the owner of the home that since you've so developed in terms of the circular decarbonization and your technology, and how about if I introduce you to one of these SOEs? And then he went to the SOE and he came back and told Mr. Wang actually, they're also doing a pretty good job and maybe even better than us. So this is the situation. And Mr. Wang thinks it is his personal choice. He would rather bankrupt or let the business fail than to pollute or harm the natural environment. But he can't force the others to take the same approach. So the key is not to make moral judgments on how business should run. You should always try to see if you run your business with a long-term vision, because you only can survive if you look into the future. And that's his philosophy of Vanke, the same way for 20-odd years. So now he's retired from Vanke, and we see all the development in the sustainability world, and as soon as we have seen the good role from the government, he suddenly realized actually he's been preparing for this time for 20 years. Why? Because in the past he's always been thinking this way. He's got various connections, relationships internationally, and the knowledge, and he knows the method. So to sum up, basically, there's various. So the priorities doesn't matter in his opinion. It's survival and long-term.
Thank you very much. Come to one of the, well, we'll come to you, I promise, but let's switch to one of the online questions. Then we'll take your question and then we'll go to Tad. And that might be as far as we get. Go ahead.
将来一定是，现在还不是。简单来说呢，中国呢，现在如果成为碳汇交易市场，成立了很多碳汇交易市场，交易的活跃，价格也上不去，应该是和国际可能是接轨。显然我觉得呢，这是如何将来碳汇市场，当然非常重要。如何来和碳汇市场接轨呢？这也应该是如何国际化的很主要的要解决问题。所以这次伦敦大学 格拉斯哥的会议上呢，其中议题当中其中之一呢，谈到如何这个碳汇市场的问题。我觉得中国非常有重要。之前我这次来呢，本身就要考察以几家的建立的碳汇市场的交易。本身呢，我这里呢，也是把我自己在中国现在已经做的这些可以碳汇交易的这些合同呢，是国际上进行交易。在之后怎么呢，把这些向中国引进？我觉得这个在中国来讲呢，是非常非常重要。那现在呢，显然和国际上这方面和欧盟、英国呢，
So he thinks in terms of carbon trading, it definitely will be very important. But for China, probably not now. And the carbon trading platform is very important. But the problem with China right now is that it's not internationalized. We actually need to have a global solution so that we can be integrated in the whole global carbon market. In COP26, we know the UCL has mentioned this as one of the main side conferences as well, so it is very, very important. And actually, part of the business trip this time is we're going to visit a business in Edinburgh that specializes in the carbon market, and to see how we can prepare for the future when it becomes important in China. So again, right now, it's not so important in China, but we're looking to learn from the UK and the EU practice.
Stay in the back.
这个碳交易如何碳计算，这是常规的今天学生们比较感兴趣的话题，非常好啊！我觉得这恰好是中国面对未来如何叫碳达峰、碳综合呢？这都必须要面对。那首先第一个这个碳，就是你是这个可观测的，第二可计量的，第三个呢才是可交易的。至于你说的提到香港的一些发展商，你说他们的态度有两种，一种非常认真的做，或者来讲不在。相对而言啊，要分类来讲，应该说呢，有这么几个分类吧。就关于对和建筑这个行业有关系的，一个在中国的就是跨国企业，比如说吧，要更具体来讲，刚才你提到一些香港企业，香港企业在中国的也投资。举个简单例子，恒隆，这是专门搞综合的打磨啊， 还要搞一些铸件的这样，应该是在这方面，据我所知道，他们在这方面非常讲究，非常讲究。相对而言，当然也有刚才说也有不太在乎的，但相对而言，平均概念来讲，和国内的发展商相比，有香港背景的大发展商在这方面是非常在乎的。就是如何来计算，不单是减排多少，而且还是用的材料的碳足迹，这样一块都在计算里面要考虑。刚才举了德龙一个例子，现在举航母，这也是个例子。第二个呢，就是像在中国的这些大的发展商企业，像万科是个代表，但它不是唯一的，但不多，就是非常在乎绿色建筑，像碳足迹。比如说，公布的2020年整个的这个就是发展商的，就是碳排放。万科呢，应该我们2020年的规模排在第3，但是它最后就按照你生产的建筑1平方米的碳排放多少，计算结果呢，我们的排第3，但我们的排放量是排到第21。那我们知道呢，前5名啊，要比后边的大量，就是完全不是一个数量级的，但反而我们是排放量排到我们排第3，这整个的规模。可显然呢，就是万科这个就表现得太优秀了，其他的就是叫一骑绝尘了但是像万科这样例子不多。第3个呢，就是还有很多的就是像清华呀。建筑科学院呢，他们都专门就是搞这个建筑科学的，他们盖的都有这种试验样板楼，就把很多的这种技术啊，减排的技术就应用上去，但这个到应用阶段还有一段的距离的。至少现在可以举这样的例子吧，就是跨国企业在中国投资的，比如说搞房地产的，香港为代表的，这样他们是最先。但是我们看的还是一个，比如说，住建部最新公布的新建筑的要求，每方米的，就是你消耗的能源多少，那可以按照现在的呢，必须要消耗能源，至少要比原来的正常的要减少消耗能源1半。这个就是那你这个不管你要不很交易，然后你看看你得达不到，那你。下一步来也达不过来，那就是这是要是让你买碳汇啊，还是罚款你啊？这要是中国的政策至上至下往下做，慢慢都会有问题。就无非就是你主动的做，你被动的做，这个它是有过程的。所以现在反而是这些学生啊，或者研究的，作为研究生啊，作为甚至博士生啊，研究这些课题呢，都要被就是。等到人家大家愿意做，你再去研究上；这些大家不愿意做，你看的是不是对的方向就应该就是往前走，那方向去了。就等于现在万科，我现在做的那个东西，那本来就刚才说了，13年前做的东西到现在还是，但我已经不满意了再给它改造这就是做到就是至少你知道吗？就刚才讲的，现在香港的在国内的这些投资商找到我这来了。我还没是找到他们去，就已经非常敏感，因为他们是一个是他按照国际标准，他们来做，所以就是什么叫企业家精神，什么叫创新精神，就是你得看着未来的时候你采取行动，你采取行动过早成先烈那你过晚了那轮不上你，怎么能又走前面去这个就是现在我们就探究和面对这样局面。
So Mr. Wang said, it seems that in terms of carbon accounting and carbon trading, we have lots of interest from the students and students. He said this is very interesting. So for us, in order to achieve the carbon neutrality, of course, we need to be able to observe, calculate, and trade how much in terms of how much carbon we produced. And you mentioned the Hong Kong real estate business as an example, and I understand there are different approach, different attitudes. So there's, in his opinion, typically three types of business. One is more international, for example, like the Hong Kong business. There's one, they build lots of commercial malls, residential, and complex, and they're actually doing a really, really good job in terms of calculating their carbon footprint. And then you have business like Vanke. There are others, but not many, that it is building. So we have looked at the report 2020 real estate developers emission report. Vanke ranked number 3 in terms of per square meter emission, and ranked overall 21. And if you look at those top 5 square meter ones, the overall emission is actually in a whole order of different orders of magnitude. And then the last week you've got more of a research like Xinhua, they have the Academy of Construction, but they're building more experimental buildings. And I have to say there's still a gap between their achievement and what would eventually go into practice. So there's new standards put forward by the Ministry of Housing that the new energy requirement standards has to reduce the emission by half. So then we face a dilemma. If you can't achieve the government standard, you have to go for some kind of carbon offsetting, carbon trading. So in China, we all know as long as this policy has been put forward, there's a top-down approach being adopted, we will always find a way to achieve it. So for people sitting here, my advice is that no matter what you do, you don't need to wait. You have more of a long-term approach, looking to the future, you need to own judgments. So the example I also mentioned in my talk today, the Vanke Shower building, it was built 30 years ago, still a very, very green construction, but then I'm not satisfied. That's why I want to make it better. And we already have guests from Hong Kong interested in this project, and we're engaging with them. So what is entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship is to find the right time. So you can't be too early because maybe you won't be able to survive until the whole market is booming. But you can't be too late because then the opportunity is quite big.
Thank you. 5 minutes remaining, so it falls here. Hong Kong, I need to give a few remarks in Chinese, and then I have a few personal thanks. So, right, that's all.
Thank you so much. 那个非常感谢大家好，刚刚问了很多非常好的问题，王总回答更细一层，看到很多这个尤其是很多实际的例子哈。我个人也说句非常，我觉得你简单总结的话，我觉得有3个这个词哈。第一个就是桥梁，气候变化是一个全球的一个大的这个两方面通过一个很多这个提出几个方案，一个全球的这个国际交通交往合作的一个桥梁，未来一个非常重要，尤其当前的一个疫情，在真正造成的这个交通交往挑战。第二个词，我觉得就是一个行动者。王总说的这个，现在这个东西还在起这个呼吁啊，这个对吧？现在是国策已经定了，就是往前走，到底去具体做，尝试怎么做。然后第3个，我觉得就是做一个创新者，就是因为气候变化是一个我们全球这个大家都得这个非常就是颠覆性的改变我们怎么生活、怎么生产、怎么消费啊，就这变成很多领域需要我们去创新。这个我尝试3个方面啊，我觉得这个非常感谢。
Very much, and thank you all for such a generous and exciting conversation. I know that you all engaged with everyone learned. We're very grateful for you for sharing your experience, your wisdom, and most importantly, your vision for decarbonization and for the world of entrepreneurship. So we're very, very grateful for taking the time today to engage with our students. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Because on this global growing campaign about, we'd love to invite everybody and also take it to conference.
First of all, thank you very much. Wonderful job. We go out in the garden, we can have the signatures, and we also have better lighting with the photograph. So we're being outside.